Hey guys, it's Mr. Mommy123, and recently in a video I talked about the improvements that COD developers could make to the next COD game, and at the end I briefly mentioned microtransactions in Call of Duty and how it could be a problem, but I didn't elaborate at all because I thought that that idea could be held separately for a different video. And in this video I'm going to be going in depth about not only microtransactions in Call of Duty, but microtransactions in gaming in general. So I just want to start off by saying that for the most part, I am against microtransactions, but I definitely do think that it can succeed in many games, and that developers can definitely implement them properly without them ruining some players' experiences. I definitely do think there's purpose for microtransactions in some games. For example, in free-to-play games, microtransactions usually come in the form of their main revenue and help them develop more of the game. In my opinion, the main way developers can stay away from bad microtransactions is A, don't implement microtransactions that are only attainable or almost only attainable through real-life currency. And B, stay away from microtransactions that could increase the enjoyment of the game. I know that sounds bad, but there is a good reason for it. Something of note here is that if microtransactions have attributes from only one of these points, it's really not a big deal. For example, the personalization packs in Call of Duty were really not an issue, even though the only way to attain them was through real-life currency, because it wasn't really affecting anyone else, and it wasn't hurting the enjoyment of the game if you didn't buy them. Now when you mix the two, that's when you run into real problems, like they have in Black Ops 3. Now in Black Ops 3, in my opinion, the microtransactions were very poorly implemented, and even though it is possible to get the high-ticket items, like the melee skins and the weapons from the supply drops that you don't buy with real money, it's nearly impossible. The chances are extremely low, and even if you do pay for supply drops, your chances are still extremely low, to the point where it's almost necessary to pay for those supply drops to get the weapons in a reasonable amount of time. So in Black Ops 3, the microtransactions are A, seemingly impossible to get without paying for, and B, improves the enjoyment of the game, which decreases the enjoyment of people that don't buy the microtransactions. And therein lies the problem. A lot of people say that pay-to-win microtransactions are the worst form of microtransactions, but I really think there's a lot more to it. Yes, it's bad if you have a weapon or something in the game that gives you an extreme advantage over other players if you buy it, because that is an enjoyment, but I think enjoyment also comes in the form of something like variety in a gun, and not only just advantages in gameplay. Now, I've been playing a lot of Warframe recently, which is a free-to-play RPG loot-based game, and it has a ton of microtransactions. It is just riddled with them. You can almost buy anything in the game for real money, but you can also almost attain everything that you can buy for real money in the game. And this is a great example of microtransactions that are implemented correctly rather than microtransactions that are implemented poorly. And going back to the 2 points that I made earlier, the Warframe microtransactions do give you enjoyment if you buy them, but also they are attainable through the game itself. And I'm not saying Warframe is a perfect game by any means. There are definitely some examples of bad microtransactions. An example of this would be the Sibir melee weapon, which would take an insane amount of time investment into playing the game if you didn't pay for the weapon itself. Speaking about another game, Destiny has gone through a weird cycle of microtransactions lately. When Bungie first implemented the Eververse trading company, which sold these microtransactions in the form of emotes, there's really no issue with it. They were only attainable through purchase with real currency, but they didn't really increase the enjoyment of the game, seeing as they were only emotes, and there's not really a ton of replay value or fun you can have with the emotes, and because of that, there's really no issue or backlash in the community about them. I mean, there was a little bit, but it was mostly rational, and there was really no huge issue with just selling emotes. Now, as time went on, Bungie started implementing more and more forms of microtransactions, but up until recently, it hasn't been too bad. You know, they've sold sparrows before, which had perks on them, but, you know, it didn't really give that much to the replay value of the game. But now, they have Vanguard rep boosters within the Sterling treasure packages, which, if you don't know what that means, is it increases the amount of reputation you gain towards a certain faction, and by gaining reputation, you get more weapons and more loot in the game. Now, this is a serious issue because for someone that doesn't buy those, they're not going to be getting as much loot, and therefore they're not going to be enjoying the game as much, because the loot in Destiny is one of the main forms of enjoyment in playing the game. Now, admittedly, this is not the worst thing in the world, because you can get these Vanguard rep boosters within the game by getting Sterling Treasure, and you can get the Sterling Treasure 3 times a week. But Bungie and Activision seem to be pushing more and more towards the point of where Black Ops 3 microtransactions are, where the main form of variation and fun in the game is almost only attainable through buying supply drops. And this is mainly why I want to make this video, because I wanted to bring attention to the fact that we shouldn't let developers implement these horrible forms of microtransactions, and there definitely are people that are against and complaining on social media, on Reddit, on YouTube, about these microtransactions in various games and various implementations of them, but I feel like a lot of people just aren't informed enough on why microtransactions are bad and how they can become bad over time and how they can hurt the development of games. But before I end this video, I do want to make one more point, and it's the fact that microtransactions are a lot more profitable than DLC is, and DLC is a lot of fun because you get an update to the game, it's more enjoyment, you get more enjoyment out of playing the game because they release new content and new stuff to play. And because microtransactions are a ton more profitable because they cost almost nothing to produce most of the time, game developers are realizing this and shifting their focus over to microtransactions rather than producing DLC, which ultimately increases your enjoyment of the game because it gives you more to play. Now, I don't have any hard evidence from personal experience in games of this happening, but I do have an example of this potentially happening in Destiny. Now, in the first year of Bungie's development of Destiny, they released DLCs that were much closer together and in turn updating and improving the game and giving it more content more often. Now, in the second year of Bungie's development of Destiny, they have started to slow down with the release of DLC, and the reason why I said before that I don't have any hard evidence of the microtransactions shifting the focus of the game developer over to microtransactions is because it's not really totally clear whether Bungie is just lazy or they care more about their microtransactions than their DLC, or more of their team is just working on Destiny 2, so they can't keep up with the pace that they set in the first year of development. Because of this, it's hard to say definitely what is going on with Bungie and their pace of development, but it is clear that they have a higher focus on microtransactions, and whether or not that's taking away from the development of DLC is unknown. So if I've convinced you that microtransaction platforms such as Black Ops 3 supply drops, or maybe even Destiny's Sterling Treasure, or things that come in the future, then I encourage you to either stop playing that game and don't support, but I know a lot of people don't have the will to stop playing one of their favorite games, or they just straight up don't want to, and I completely understand that. That's totally understandable. So if you don't want to completely stop supporting the game and don't play it anymore, then just either complain on social media, complain on Reddit, or support the people that are complaining to the game developers so it becomes an apparent issue, and hopefully this will start enough uprising to the point where game developers will start realizing that these forms of microtransactions like that are in Black Ops 3 are just horrible and they should just stop doing that altogether. Obviously I have high hopes for what might happen, but this is really turning into a big issue within the gaming industry, and I don't want this to get worse and worse over time, and it's seemingly doing that, so I'm a little nervous about the future of gaming at this point in time, but I just want this microtransaction ordeal to end, and hopefully you do too, and that's why I encourage you to go complain to game developers on Reddit, on Twitter, on any form of social media, because it will bring notice to them that most of their fans do not enjoy this shit. So that's about it for my rant on microtransactions. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you agree with my points that I made in this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Hostile UAV incoming. Hardpoint identified. Hostiles have the hardpoint. Threat down. Enemy down. Hardpoint locked down. Hardpoint contested. Hardpoint contested. UAV inbound. Hellstorm launch. Authorization ruined. Hardpoint contested.
Roger.
Superior fucking.
contested. Hardpoint locked down. Hardpoint contested.